You can't really discuss the environmental impacts of fossil fuels without discussing oil spills. And this is a picture of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill from a satellite photo, and you can see this is a very wide spread spill that impacted the shoreline of a number of states and much of the Gulf of Mexico. Was impacted in some way, although this is a more local area than the entire Gulf of Mexico. So first we should discuss the fact that some oil seeps do occur naturally on the ocean floor, and this is a picture of the Santa Barbara Channel on the top, and it's showing where the arrows are pointing. That's where oil is seeping out of the sediments on the ocean floor, and then that oil is getting washed by the current downstream, if you will. And so that does happen, and the difference is that these are slow seeps. They occur over a large area, and the microbes that are living in this area are adjusted to that, and they're able to break it down generally because it's a slower seep. Also, there are small oil spills that occur all the time just from us. So for example, if your car leaks oil onto your driveway and then it rains, that runoff is going to go into the streams because it's being washed down the drain system. In some municipalities, storm drains used to go to water treatment plants, and in some older cities they still do, but this is becoming less common. And so as a result, people got it in their heads that it was better to dump the oil into a storm drain, thinking it would go to a water treatment plant. But often the storm drain simply drains to a local stream, and so people were being very careful to collect their oil and dump it into the drain, thinking that it would get treated, and it wasn't. And so there was a big public education campaign that began in the early 90s that is still kind of going on, where people put signs at storm drains saying, "Don't dump waste here because it drains to the river." But the large oil spills are the ones that get all the press and the ones that really can cause major damage to ecosystems on a large scale. And of course this happens because we are transporting billions of gallons of oil every year around the world, and of course accidents happen. And so there's many different examples. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they respond to as many as 150 oil spills just in the United States alone every year. And many of these are small and they don't get as much news, but sometimes they're really large, so it just depends on what spill. And then that's in the United States. There are other countries where oil spills may occur and the regulations may not be as rigorous, so they may even occur more frequently, and they may not be cleaned up as well as they are required to be in the United States. So some of the classic examples of large oil spills that people have heard about, one is the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska that took place in 1989. It spilled 11 million gallons of oil into pristine waterways. In 2008, two ships collided along the Mississippi River, and that spilled 420,000 gallons into the river. And then finally, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill is the largest oil spill in the United States history. And so we'll discuss that one in a little more detail. The Deepwater Horizon spill lasted for 3 months. So the oil rig exploded, and it was a pressurized well, and so the oil just gushed out of the well. After the explosion, when that rig blew up, there was nothing to hold back the pressure, and so the oil gushed out. It took 3 months for them to cap the well, and as a result 185 million gallons were spilled into the Gulf of Mexico. There was a lot of wildlife that was visible that people had to rescue. So here's a number of pelicans that were just coated with oil, and luckily they were found and cleaned. But there's a lot of impacts to ecosystems that are not as obvious. So there's a lot of animals that you don't see because they're not on the surface. And so this is just a nice diagram that's showing all of the different parts of the ecosystem in a marine ecosystem that are affected by oil spills. So surface oil gets onto marshes and coats plants and animals, and it causes a reduction in productivity. So things die off because of the oil on the surface and the oil tar mats that form. And then if you go down further in the water column, as waves come along, they break up the oil that's on the surface and form smaller droplets of oil that then can go down through the water column. And then as a result of that, you get some of these deeper organisms that start to ingest the oil, or it coats their parts of their bodies and causes them to die off. And then that impacts the whole food web going down. And so a lot of organisms are affected either directly or indirectly from the oil spill.